Millions around the world wait at bus stops every single day, heading to school, work, or back home. And for some reason, those bus stops feel safe. The tiny bench covered by the tiny canopy is a piece of sanctuary on an otherwise mammoth and alien road. On one such bus stop in Norway in the early morning hours of February the 3rd, 2010, waited a young Pakistani woman as she had countless mornings in the past. But little did she know, this morning and this bus stop was going to be different. Under that bus stop's canopy was going to be the last moment of peace she would ever know. This is the story of that morning, that bus stop, and that woman. This is the story of Faiza Ashraf. Hi everyone, welcome to the Desi Crime Podcast, a show where we dive deep into some of the craziest cases from around South Asia. I'm your host Aishwarya,
And I'm Aryan.
and the case that I have for you today is so terribly tragic.
Aishwarya, it is a case that I came across because of the amazing Instagram page, Brown History.
Yes.
And I was like, you need to cover this case because it's rare that we get these Scandinavia meets Desi community cases.
Yep, so
We
rare.
have sort of in the Annie Devani case,
Yep.
although not directly, but this
Right.
was in Scandinavia, right? In that
Correct,
part
in
of
the heart of
world.
it, yeah.
And
That's not how it went though. It was Aryan saying that he was going to cover this case and then me beating him to it. But yeah.
not beating me to it. She literally stole I said I'm going to cover it. And then lo and behold, one day she says, I have a script ready.
Yeah, that's just how it goes.
Yeah. Speaking of being unfair and stealing, I'd like to steal a subscribe from you. If you can hit the subscribe button down there, it really helps the channel
Somewhere, yeah.
growing and, keeping the engines at Desi Studios alive. So hit the subscribe button down there.
Go do it.
Let's get on with the story now, Aishwarya.
For this episode, I'm taking you back to the 3rd of February 2010 at 6:30 in the morning to the municipality of Haslum, just outside of Oslo, the capital of Norway. Now, for starters, forgive me if any of the Norwegian names are pronounced wrong. That freezing morning in Haslum, 26-year-old Pakistani Norwegian Faiza Ashraf had woken up to get ready for work. Just a week ago, her brothers and parents had left for Pakistan to visit some family, but Faiza and her older sister had stayed back. So that morning, it was just the two sisters in the house who woke up and had a nice breakfast together. Soon after, Faiza left for the bus stop where she waited every day for the bus that would take her to H&M in downtown Oslo.
Hold on. The script that you have written, has it written as Hens and Moritz?
Which is the Scandinavian full form, and I thought I'd be able
What
to
do you
say
mean
it.
Scandinavian full form?
It is a Scandinavian company,
And that's the...
and that's the full form.
Oh man, that's
But then when I started reading it, I'm like, there's no way I can
didn't know.
actually
I thought
pronounce
H&M
that.
was
Let me
the
not
brand.
make
Okay,
a fool
cool.
of
Okay,
myself.
that
Yeah,
was-
H&M. She worked in H&M. She was
Hens
at
and
the
Moritz,
bus
it's
stop.
a Scandinavian company.
Yes.
The more you know.
The more you know. Now, Faiza had taken this bus to work hundreds of times in the past. This was a route she was very accustomed to. And so when a dark blue sedan pulled up in front of her at the bus stop that morning, and a large, well-built, muscular man got out of the car, for a second, Faiza didn't think much of it. The bus stop wasn't hers after all. All kinds of people were free to stand there if they wished. Little did Faiza know at that moment, though, that well-built man wasn't there for a bus to work. He was there for her. As this man got out of the car, opened the trunk of his car and looked towards Faiza, he knew she matched the description he had been given. She was the one he needed to take. And so within seconds, on the empty streets of Norway, an abduction took place in broad daylight. This man, an assailant unknown to Faiza, grabbed her as she tried to fight and scream with every ounce of her being, but her strength paled in comparison to his. Faiza fought. She fought till he picked her up off the ground and headed to the trunk of his car. When he threw her body inside the truck, Faiza screamed as she watched the trunk shut, leaving her in complete darkness with no place to move. In that moment, from the shock of the incident, Faiza couldn't register much. All she knew to do was bang her limbs on the walls of the trunk in hopes that a passerby would hear her and alert someone. Now, while Faiza's banging inside the car didn't alert anyone on those empty morning streets of Oslo, it did make her assailant stop the car and open the trunk to talk to her. A shocked Faiza looked at the large man in awe, appalled at the randomness of the attack on her. Why her? She must have thought at that moment. When her attacker opened the trunk, he spoke only a few words to her, but they were words that suddenly made everything make sense. They were words that turned this seemingly random attack into a planned and calculated one. I won't kill you, I promise. I've been paid a lot just to kidnap you. Those were the last words Faiza heard before the trunk was shut on her again, leaving her in the darkness of those words once again. Faiza Ashraf was born in 1984 in Norway to an immigrant, close-knit Pakistani family that had moved out of Pakistan and to the frigid Scandinavian country for a shot at a better life. It was in Norway that the family's beautiful baby girl, their second daughter, Faiza, was born. Faiza meaning the one who's victorious. Faiza, being the middle child, nestled amongst one older sister and two younger brothers, was equal parts pampered and equal parts the adult in the family, and absolutely doted on by everyone. But Faiza never let that spoil her. Faiza was hardworking, responsible, earning her own money from a very young age, and even financially supporting her family. And Faiza was beautiful. Her dark brown hair fell below her shoulders with her hazel brown eyes and nose piercing, hinting to her ethnicity and heritage. In photos where she's smiling, it's not a forced smile like the one I tend to make in front of a camera. It's an honest and infectious smile, almost making you want to know what was so funny in the moment. And so it was no surprise to Faiza, or anyone who knew her, that there was someone around her who had taken a liking to her, a very strong liking. A 28-year-old Pakistani Norwegian man, a taxi driver named Shamrez Khan. Shamrez's sister was married to Faiza's father's cousin, and so her family and Shamrez's family had known each other for years. But Faiza and Shamrez never intimately hung out together or even so much as developed a friendship. Yet somehow, from the moment Shamrez had seen Faiza, he had utterly and completely been mesmerized by her. Initially, his attempt at winning her over started by him following her and trying to find mutual connections so he could pass on messages to her. Shortly after, Shamrez even had Faiza's personal phone number, where he would text and call her to try and woo her. I'm sure initially attention from Shamrez may have been a little bit endearing. But that feeling of endearment passed very quickly when Shamrez's behavior didn't stop, despite Faiza making it clear that she wanted absolutely nothing to do with him. If anything, the stronger Faiza's rejection of Shamrez got, the stronger Shamrez's desire to be with her got.
The forbidden fruit,
The
right?
forbidden fruit, something in the psyche of some of these men we cover and women they cannot have, is insane, but we'll get to
But
that
I just
later.
think what could the woman do then? I mean,
I
saying
know.
no is not an
What
option.
literally, what can
Ghosting is
you
not an
do?
option.
I
Saying
know.
yes is not an option.
Yeah, there's nothing to do. Reports state that while initially Shamrez was only pining for a conversation with Faiza, he eventually went on to pressurizing her into marrying him, claiming he would show up to her family's home to ask her parents for her hand in marriage. To Faiza, all of this was absolutely absurd. For a man to spend years, 5 years to be exact, pursuing her when she had made her disinterest very clear was eerie to her and was slowly beginning to make her feel unsafe wherever she went. To friends and siblings, Faiza had discussed possibly changing her phone number, changing her name, and moving to a different city. That was the level of Shamrez's obsession with her. No matter how many months passed or even years passed, Faiza seemed to be all Shamrez wanted, sending hundreds of texts every day and making call after call after call. Shamrez had made sure she knew that too. Shamrez is what came to Faiza's mind the moment her kidnapper told her he had been paid to pick her up. While she was stuck inside that now suffocating trunk, only Shamrez's face, his lust and obsession for her, flashed before her eyes. In those panicked and frenzied moments, as Faiza gasped for the last few ounces of air remaining in the trunk, she suddenly realized she had something in her pocket, her mobile phone. With every ounce of strength Faiza could muster, she pulled out her phone. The phone's light blinded her in the dark, but it was her one shot at survival. And so, Faiza pressed 3 buttons on her phone. 112, the police helpline in Norway. And surely, a responder picked up. The call lasted a long time, more than 30 minutes, with Faiza making the call at 6:44 am and the call finally getting cut at 7:21 am. Here is a recreation of Faiza's call with the responder, but keep in mind, this is a transcript that has a few grammatical errors from being translated from Norwegian to English.
Hello?
Hello?
I've been kidnapped.
Have you been kidnapped?
Yes. There's a man, I'm lying in the trunk.
Who are you then? What's your name?
My name is Faiza. I'm very afraid that he will hear me.
Wait, who's done it?
I don't know. I left home because I was going to work and was on my way to the bus station. Then he stood outside and grabbed me as I passed him.
Where do you live?
At Haslam? Please help me. He has beaten me so much. I don't know where he's driving. It's a dark car.
What was your name, you said?
Faiza.
Faiza?
Yes.
But you say this is a man?
Yes.
That you are lying in the trunk of a car?
Yes.
And you don't know where you're going?
No, I'm very afraid that he will hear me.
Yes, I can't hear any engine noise there.
I'm lying in the trunk. Please help me.
Aran, at this point, something about this responder is irking me a little bit, okay? And I know this is a responder who's trying to be completely thorough in the details.
Yeah.
But this is a woman who's running out of oxygen. And there's a person who's confirming her name multiple times and saying he can't hear engine noises.
And to me, it doesn't matter. Like, to me, even if she's lying, what is the cost of let's say, what's the cost of a lie, right? Like, you're not gonna... Your police forces aren't going to be wasted.
Precisely.
If you mistakenly chase a kidnapper. So I'm a little irked as well.
Yeah, I agree.
How did this happen?
I was on my way to the bus station to take the bus to Oslo because I have to go to work.
How did this happen here then?
I just walked past him and took 3-4 steps. Then he came and just grabbed me and started pulling me. I tried to break free, but he pulled me and threw me into the car. And then we fought for quite a long time. Now it stops. I have to hang up.
No. Just hold the line.
At this point, for some reason, Faiza cut the call, possibly in fear of her attacker hearing her. But at 6:49 am, the responder called her back and she picked up.
Hello, am I talking to Faiza?
Yes, it is me.
Yes, how are you?
He stopped and said he wasn't going to hurt me. He had picked me up because someone had asked him to.
Well, who is that?
He's Norwegian, but he says it is a Pakistani who had asked him to come. He's been looking for my phone. I'm afraid he'll find it.
But do you know if you drive on E18?
I know nothing.
But now you've spoken to him, haven't you?
Yes, he says he won't hurt me. He says someone asked him to do it. He was to receive 100,000 kron. But there's a man called Shamrez. He's terrorized me and tormented me for 5 years. I just wonder if it could be him.
Shamrez?
Yes.
Do you see what kind of car this is?
No, he tied my arms, but I managed to get free. One hand.
What does he look like, the one you talked to?
He's Norwegian. He has no hair on his head and looks very rough. Young.
But you're still lying in... Can't you hold the phone out towards the road so someone can hear some sounds? I hear absolutely no sound.
At this point, a crying Faiza tries to hold the phone to the wall of the trunk, trying to get the responder to hear the car or the sounds of the road. The call continues.
Did you hear?
No, I don't. You understand?
Now he stops again.
But is it a big car or a small car?
I didn't notice it. I walked in my own world.
But this Shamrez, who is it? Is there someone you've been in love with?
No, I have nothing to do with him. He's only been trying to get me for at least 5 years. He has terrorized me.
Ishwara, at this point, I don't know what the technology... we see in movies that if somebody is online for like 5 minutes, they can be traced.
CID said 3 minutes,
yeah. I know. That's a bad standard for forensic science. But what has this police responder done up until this point to dispatch some units or alert somebody apart from being the judiciary, apart from being the
Being an
investigator
interviewer in the
Yeah.
in that moment.
You're
I
a
know.
police
I know.
responder, not the investigator.
I know. And in this moment, after hearing this call, the Norwegian police received a lot of flack for how long Faiza actually managed to keep them on call while she's suffocating. She spent more than 30 minutes on
Sure,
call.
my blood is boiling.
And
right
we'll
now.
see what happens at the end of it, what they're able to do with that. But at this point, not much is happening, which is insane.
Yes, but do you know anything more about this Shamrez guy?
He works in Oslo taxi. He's a couple of years older than me. He's dealt drugs and stabbed someone.
And you think it is he who could be behind this?
Yes, it must be him. He's been texting me and calling me from so many numbers that I don't know which number he has anymore.
Here, I get a Shamrez Khan, yes.
By this point in the call, the operator has looked up Faiza in their national database and has now looked up Shamrez too, who on the system has a clear criminal record from the past, having even spent a year and 6 months in prison in 2002 for the stabbing that Faiza mentions. The call continues.
Will you find me soon?
Yes, but we don't know what we're looking for. That is our problem. Are you able to understand whether you're on your way to Oslo or another way?
No, I do not know, but he fluctuates a lot. My head hurts because he's hit me in the head many times.
You just have to hold the line. Do you have a lot of battery left on your phone, don't you?
Yes, but I have to hang up if we stop. He's been looking for the phone.
What we have to do is to try and track your phone. You must not turn it off. It's our way of trying to find out where you are.
If I hang up, can you track anyway?
Yes, we can do that, but you must not switch off your phone.
Okay, I won't unless he finds it and takes it from me.
You can't put it in your bra or something like that?
He'll try to check.
I'll keep in touch with you now, okay? I won't hang up until it's necessary, and then we'll try to see if we can find out where you are.
I'm so afraid he will do something to me.
But you think it is Shamrez who might be behind this?
Yes, the kidnapper told me he wasn't going to hurt me. He did it for someone else. He was supposed to get 100,000 kron.
Yes.
My first thought was that it was Shamrez. He's been terrorizing me for 5 years and is not entirely sound in the head.
Are you still driving?
Yes.
You've been driving for a long time now. Let's see. When did you call us? It's been about 15 minutes now. I think if you're on your way to Oslo, then you're well inside Oslo now.
Yes, and now he slows down. And I have asthma. I can't breathe in here.
Try to bang the car a little as if you want to make contact with him. Look what he does.
No, I dare not.
You don't dare.
At this point, it's obvious that Faiza did try banging on the car as suggested by the operator, but nothing happened. The call continues.
He said he was going to drive me into town somewhere. Now he drives very, very fast.
When did you last talk to Shamrez?
I don't remember. He's tried to send messages, but I've rejected him.
Do you remember when you last heard from him?
A couple of weeks ago, maybe.
Here, we just have to find out as best we can what is behind this. But you think it's Shamrez?
Yes.
Shweta, this is infuriating. The poor woman's answer is not going to change if you
know,
ask
it is.
15 or 20
I
times. She's in a
know.
trunk right now.
It is so irritating to read of this call's transcript, and maybe this is a tactic on the police's part, because we know they try to keep the victim on call the
Yeah.
longest they possibly can to track
Yeah,
the phone
sure,
number.
Ashwara. But we've covered enough cases where we know that 911 responders do create small talk so that the victim feels, has incentive to keep the call going.
Right.
But they're trained very well to make the small talk in a way that is reassuring for the victim. That makes the victim
This
feel
is
safe.
so
Here,
irritating.
the victim, I'm sure, is feeling like this guy is not believing me.
I
I
know.
need to make them believe me. That is.
That it is
such a precarious
Shamrez, that there
position
is
she is
traffic
in.
outside. I know.
You need to calm them down. You need to tell them we have dispatched something. We are doing something. That is
I
the
know.
way you should be,
I know.
continuing the call.
This
So
is
this
just
is
all
not
really
it.
sad.
This is not it.
We can only try. I'm afraid to hang up on you too, you understand? Now, 20 minutes have passed and you're still driving?
Yes.
That stop you had, what happened then?
He tied my hands behind my back.
Did you get to see where you were then?
I tried, but it was very difficult. I saw a house nearby. Now he drives very, very fast.
Yes, I hear there is a bit of noise.
Now it's starting to... I have no feeling in one hand anymore.
Wait a minute.
Have you talked to my sister?
No, I haven't. I'll get someone else to call your sister.
Yes, but you mustn't worry her.
It is clear that when we call her and tell her what has happened, she will probably be worried anyway.
Yes, I know, but
You say you're starting to lose feeling in one arm. How are you lying?
I lie on one arm. It's tied behind the back. He tied them both up, but I managed to get one free. Can you track down the phone?
Yes, we are working on it now. But he's still driving fast, isn't he?
He swings a lot.
Can you hear a lot of traffic noise around you?
No, I don't hear anything.
The driver here, does he speak Norwegian?
Yes, he's Norwegian.
Now, you've been driving for quite a long time, almost half an hour. How are you? How's your arm?
My mouth is completely dry, my lips are dry, my head and nose really hurt.
Try and breathe. If you start to dig yourself up now, back there as it is so tight, you must try not to do that. You must breathe calmly and think that we are now tracking your phone. We have notified Oslo. We will maintain contact with you. Just try to breathe completely calmly and take it as calmly as you can. Did you feel you can do it?
Yes, I'm so scared.
I understand that very well. But Shamrez, why has he been so keen on you? Do you know?
No, I don't know. His sister is married to my dad's cousin. The families have been in contact for many years, but I've never met him or been with him. But he contacted me when I was working at school 5 years ago, and since then it's been back and forth very regularly.
But when Shamrez makes contact with you, do you talk to him?
All the times I've answered the phone, I've asked him to stop calling. I want nothing to do with him.
We still at least have a good line on the phone. I can hear it well. You can hear me well?
Yes, but how long does it take to track the phone?
No, we're on. I see our operations manager is in touch with them now.
Does it usually take a long time?
They have to start such a search, don't they? It is therefore very important that you try to have your phone on all the time.
Yes.
You've driven quite fast for a while.
In the middle of this sentence, the call gets cut again, but the operator calls back. This time, however, Faiza's last few words would be heard by the operator.
Hello?
Hello, Faiza.
He drives very fast. He stops now. He stops now.
He stops now. He stops now. Those were Faiza's last words before she cut the call, seemingly because the driver stopped the car. We can tell from this call though, a panicked Faiza for a moment thought she could still survive this, and so she tried her best to tell the responder everything she knew. And then she gives them the most important piece to the puzzle of her kidnapping, Shamrez's name. She tells them she thinks the man behind this attack was her obsessive lover, Shamrez. After this call with the police got cut, the police got down to doing their duty, to try and find the now missing Faiza. And step number 1 was to track Faiza's phone location. While the Norwegian police received a ton of flack for not being able to track Faiza's phone in the more than 30 minutes that she kept them on call, the police say that Faiza's phone eventually running out of battery meant they couldn't do anything with her last location. By the time they arrived at her last mobile pinged location, there was no sign of Faiza, her kidnapper, or his car there. Why the police weren't actively on the road while tracking her phone in those 30 minutes, I have no idea. And so those 30 minutes of bravery and composure on Faiza's part went to waste. Not completely though, because in those 30 minutes was mentioned police's step number 2 in finding her, Shamrez's home address and phone number.
Aishwarya, in urban cities in the West, like take a Chicago or New York, which are, festered with crime.
Yeah.
I can see why the police is sort of doing this type 1, type 2 error analysis to ensure that a lead that they're going after is an actual one, because they have so much crime being reported all the time. This is Oslo, Norway.
I was going to say, it's not at all like Chicago.
In a few years back, I know crime has increased off late, even in Scandinavia, but this is a few years back. It's not like you're getting inundated with calls that you really need to pass through the details of it. So why you waited for 30-40 minutes?
This reaction is just very shocking, and nobody quite knows what made this happen. When the police arrived at Shamrez's residence where he lived with his family, Shamrez was distraught at the news of Faiza's kidnapping. He seemed like he couldn't believe it. When questioned about his relationship to Faiza, he went on to tell the police a story of their love for each other and how the two have been dating for almost a decade, since 2001. Quote, "I was the one she was closest to. We were together and talked every single day. Also, both she and I wanted us to get married the right way. That is why my parents went to her parents and asked for permission. We wanted to get married, but her parents were against the marriage. In Pakistan, we have a caste system and she belonged to a different caste. I am now pleading with those holding her to let her go." This is what Shamrez told the media in the aftermath of Faiza's disappearance. As proof of their relationship, Shamrez also tells the police of a missed call he received from Faiza while she was in the trunk in between the calls with the police at 6:46 a.m. But he claims he was asleep when she called and only saw the missed call once he woke up much later, by which point it was already too late to get in touch with her. By that point, Faiza had vanished. But to the police, this story sounded fishy in light of everything Faiza had told them on her call from the trunk. And so when 2 days passed with no sign of Faiza and with Shamrez unwilling to break with the true story, the police got him down to the station and produced a warrant to keep him in custody for 4 weeks. In those 4 weeks, while also interrogating Shamrez and digging up his cell phone records, the police scoured the area near the bus stop for CCTV footage and launched an enormous search operation for Faiza.
Now that sounds like the Scandinavian
That's what you
police
need to
me.
do. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
At the same time, the police released a description of Faiza's assailant, a bald, well-built, white, young man, and urged the public to come forward with information on people in their lives who matched that description and had acted fishy in the days leading up to or of Faiza's disappearance. Slowly though, the ground searches for Faiza reached a dead end as police's theories on where she may be turned out to be false, and as snow slowly engulfed Oslo and its neighboring regions. The many snowmobiles, helicopters, and dogs that had been employed to search the dense forests in the region came up empty-handed one after another. While police's tactical teams had suggested that Faiza may be held in a cabin in the woods, all searched cabins turned up empty. Other than a lock of hair belonging to Faiza found at the bus stop where she was kidnapped and a set of male footprints found in the snow in the same area, it seemed like she had just vanished into thin air. When weeks passed and none of the police's suspected theories of Faiza's location seemed to be correct, the public and the media made up their own theories of where she might be and why she got kidnapped. Some reports stated that she had left the country, with people even claiming to have sighted her outside of Norway. Some reports questioned whether Faiza could have gotten herself kidnapped to run away from a conservative family that was trying to get her forcefully married. Other reports wondered if Faiza's family got her kidnapped because she had refused to marry the person of their choice. But while Faiza's story captured the national imagination and people continued to speculate, the police made a huge breakthrough in this case by corroborating the cell phone data of Faiza's last known phone location to those of other people in the location at the same time. And from that data, the police arrested a 25-year-old man named Howard Niflo from his home, a man who looked exactly like the description Faiza provided of her kidnapper from inside the trunk. Howard was tall, muscular, bald, white, young, and had a dark blue car, just as Faiza had described. It also turns out that the shoe prints that had been found in the snow near the bus stop came out to be a perfect match with a pair of shoes owned by Howard. But despite this arrest, Howard remained quiet, claiming never to have known or met either Faiza or Shamrez. Yet, just as the police had a hunch with Shamrez, they had a hunch with Howard too. They knew they were on the right track. Now they only needed to grill the two men harder. They doubled down on the stories of these two men, and talking to Howard's employers revealed he had been missing from work on the Wednesday of Faiza's disappearance. From talking to Faiza and Shamrez's friends, the police also learnt that Faiza and Shamrez were never dating or in love or about to get married. It was only Shamrez who had been pining after her despite her constant rejection of him. Now the two men were caught in a lie, and the police decided to use its interrogation tactics to get the truth out. That's when they decided to focus on one of the two men, Howard, who they thought was more likely to talk. Unlike Shamrez, Howard seemed scared. With a history of gambling debts that needed to be paid and collectors who were after him, Howard seemed like the more vulnerable of the two. The police told him he'd get a shorter sentence if he spoke now. They told him Shamrez was about to talk any moment now, and if Shamrez spoke before him, he'd be in trouble, and a host of other quintessentially police things to say. And they worked. They really worked. 3 weeks after Faiza's mysterious disappearance on the 24th of February 2010, Howard took the police to Faiza's location. It wasn't a cabin in the woods or Howard's home. It was in a ditch buried under the snow in one of Oslo's most popular ski locations. Faiza was no more. Back at the police station, Howard told the police how he found himself in the middle of this obsessive one-sided equation. Howard had met Shamraze when he was working at a gas station near Oslo in September of 2009. Slowly, Howard saw Shamraze come in more, and Shamraze became a regular. Quote, I tried to avoid him, but he continued to come by often and was a very active type, he told the police. But I don't know how much I believe that. He continues and tells the police that while initially Shamraze would only stop to get gas from the station, he eventually started coming in and making conversation with Howard, to the point that eventually, if Shamraze would come to the station and Howard wasn't there, Shamraze would ask the other gas station employees where Howard was and why he hadn't come to work that day. It literally sounds like not only was Shamraze in a one-sided love story with Faiza, but also in a one-sided friendship with Howard. Slowly, the two men sort of became forced friends. And that is when, one day outside work, Shamraze asked Howard if he could kidnap someone for him. Sure, Howard was appalled at the proposition, but Howard had some serious gambling debts that needed to be paid, and Shamraze was offering him 100,000 Norwegian krone for the kidnapping, which is 7,66,000 rupees, or almost $10,000 in today's money. Besides, Howard also says that while kidnapping someone was a serious crime, Shamraze had told him very clearly that Faiza was not to be killed. In fact, she was deliberately to be kept alive so that she could be tortured. Somehow, in Howard's warped steroid-infused brain, this made it better and made him more inclined to agreeing. It wasn't murder after all, he thought to himself.
Aishwarya, I thought you were going to say something on the lines of she's to be kept alive so that he could marry her.
Yeah, no. The man had gone on a much worse standard. Yeah.
This is a sick man's brain.
Absolutely. But that wasn't all. Other instructions were also given to Howard. For example, he was told to inject Faiza with heroin against her will, to the point where her body demanded it, to the point of making her an addict. He had told Howard he wanted Faiza disfigured with acid thrown on her face and her body parts like her ears slowly cut off. In fact, police also found out that Shamraze had paid random drug addicts on Oslo's streets 30,000 krone to throw acid on Faiza too, but all of them had come back and said absolutely not. At this point, I feel like I need to bring up something very common that happens in South Asia and among South Asians, but doesn't happen nearly as often outside of South Asia. Acid attacks. This concept of disfiguring a woman who rejects you is so unique to our countries, I just wonder where it comes from. It's a weird combination of a man's overfixation on love to the point where love is the end-all be-all, and so rejection isn't a normal part of life but a very deep personal insult, combined with a man's inflated ego where he just cannot fathom why a woman he likes doesn't like him back, combined with deep-rooted sexism that causes the if she can't be mine, she can't be anyone else's attitude.
It's crazy how rampant this is, not just across South Asia, but the episodes we've covered. Take the Noida University case, where the student killed his ex-girlfriend because she couldn't be his. And you know, it's not so much his murder that exemplifies this phenomenon. It's the comments. It's the response on the reel and on the YouTube video where people are saying, oh no, but he was in love with her and that pain must have been unbearable. So it kind of makes sense. Also cover his side. Please give a balanced view.
What's funny to me is we've all been betrayed in those young teenage crazy years where we're all kind of troubled and crazy, and this attitude that love is the end all be all rather than just one facet of your life. It's the root cause of so many problems. It's to me essentially the cause behind honor killings as well.
Aishwarya, if I'm being very clear with our viewers in our community that I'll not be giving a balanced perspective of somebody that kills because they were in love and their love wasn't reciprocated back to them. If we lose a listener because of that review, because of that, then well,
you can leave.
I couldn't really care less, because in this case there is no giving his side of the story.
There isn't. And if you're a young person going through a breakup, even if you were really badly done wrong by your partner, get fucking over it. It's life. It happens to the worst of us. There's more wonderful people out there. Anyway, despite hearing all of these demands from Shamraze, Howard agrees to kidnap Faiza. He tells the police that when he arrived at the bus stop that morning and made his attempt at kidnapping Faiza, a struggle broke out between the two, but in that struggle, Howard managed to tie a rope around Faiza's neck, scaring her into submission and into the car. Quote, she shouted quite loudly for help and I dragged her back to the car. I was stressed that someone would hear it. I tried explaining to her that I wasn't going to hurt her. End quote. Inside the car, he even taped all over her head and mouth, tied the string from her neck to a part of the trunk, and then tied her hands behind her back too, which is what caused Faiza to tell the police responder that she had lost feeling in one arm because it was tied and she was lying on it. He also tells the police something really eerie and unfortunate. He tells them of his story of steroid addiction and how it made his brain so fuzzy he barely remembers kidnapping Faiza. Quote, I've always used a lot of steroids, but in January it completely stopped. I trained and got in really good shape, but at the end of the summer of 2009, things started to go downhill. I felt bad and had bad vision and didn't understand what happened. End quote. The steroids made him so dazed that halfway through driving Faiza, he forgot he was kidnapping her. When I was driving towards Soli, I suddenly heard a thud in the boot. I got chills down my spine and got a bit of a shock. Then it started to dawn on me that I actually had someone in the trunk. End quote. It was at that point that he stopped the car to tell Faiza that he wouldn't kill her and that he had only been paid to kidnap her. When he said this to her, Shamraiz's face came to Faiza's mind, and something compelled her to try her one last attempt at running, and she actually succeeded in getting out of the trunk and even ran a bit. But Howard caught up with her and threw her back in. This time he blasted music in his car so the thuds of her body inside the trunk would get drowned out. When Howard began to drive again though, he actually had a change of heart and really felt the urge to let her go. Suddenly, he remembered a show he had been watching, Dexter, the show where the protagonist is a forensic examiner by day and a predator-killing murderer by night. Inspired by an episode of Dexter that, by the way, prosecutors would go on to play in court, Howard now suddenly wanted to save Faiza, call Shamraiz to the woods and kill him in front of her instead. He said, quote, I started to think through what I was going to carry out and that it was a plan that was most likely going to fail. I sat in the car for a while and decided to drop the whole thing, end quote. But he needed Faiza in an isolated location so he could tell her that he was letting her go, but he needed her to not go to the police. So he drove the car towards the ski area in Soli into the snowy frozen woods where he finally stopped the car. I opened the trunk to say we were going to screw it. I didn't get an answer. She lay completely still and looked like she was sleeping. Then I immediately thought of the tape and that she had said she has asthma. I panicked, took off the tape, tried to shake her and shout, but got no reaction. End quote. When Howard got closer to Faiza to check whether or not she was alive, he says he noticed that somehow the way she was lying had made the rope around her neck much tighter than the way he had left it, which is when it dawned on him. Faiza was no more. The initial plan was for Howard to call Shamraiz to the spot where they were both supposed to torture Faiza. But upon seeing her dead, Howard knew he needed to hide her body right there. Now, here's the weird part that makes police doubt this whole story, that makes police believe this was never an accidental death, but premeditated murder. So when Howard decides to dump Faiza under the snow in this ski location, it turns out that there was already a ditch there. A ditch Howard claims he had dug previously as a contingency in the event Faiza died. That is the ditch he eventually dumped her body in, where he led police to 3 weeks after her kidnapping.
Aishwarya, I don't think that is premeditated murder. I know that is premeditated murder because let's say we believe what he's saying right now, that it was in the scenario that she died. If you're going to subject somebody to something where you think it is necessary to build a ditch because maybe she dies,
then it's still premeditated.
It's premeditated murder.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Once Faiza's body was found and returned to her parents, they held a service in her honor at a mosque in Oslo, which attracted people from all over the country that had followed Faiza's story. 4,000 people fit inside the mosque on the day of her service. Complete strangers, people of all races, ethnicities and descents, comforting her parents, listening to prayers for her, and spending moments in silence in honor of her. Shortly after Howard gave his testimony, Shamrez spoke too, agreeing to everything Howard had said, taking responsibility for his role in the death of Faiza. His motive? Extract his revenge for something that was never Faiza's fault. The fact that she couldn't get herself to love Shamrez. The fact that she wanted a say, a choice in who she wanted to marry. Norway was appalled at the brutality of this crime and the reason behind it. They wanted to see Shamrez and Howard punished, as did prosecutors who argued tooth and nail to prove this wasn't an accidental death but premeditated murder. But they failed. On Thursday, 14th of May 2011, more than a year after Faiza's disappearance and death, Howard and Shamrez were sentenced to second-degree murder and kidnapping of Faiza Ashraf, not her premeditative murder. Howard got 17 years in prison, and because Shamrez, according to the verdict, had no direct role in her death, got 8 years. Don't even have to say it. I know it.
This is in 2011?
Yeah.
So you're telling me he's out now?
Well, not really. You'll see.
Okay, but I will say, if you are saying it's not premeditated murder, then I do want to see a punishment for torture. Right?
Yeah,
because they
true.
claim, was that given or was it just kidnapping
no, it's
and
kidnapping
murder?
And premeditated murder.
It has to be one of those.
Yeah,
you can't,
I know.
Of maybe, there needs to be another
This is
charge
the man
for the
who tried
torture.
to pay all sorts of people for an acid attack. It's insane that he wasn't charged for any of those things. Like, it's crazy. 8 years. Justifiably, the same Norway that was up in arms before went up in arms again. The thought of Shamrez out on Norway's streets, possibly pursuing other women just 8 years after Faiza's death, was unacceptable to the public. And so, with the help of some very prolific Norwegian trial lawyers and their tireless efforts, Shamrez and Howard were put on trial again for a second time, with the expectation of a higher sentence. This time too, the claim that this was premeditated murder did not pass the test of the court. But the judge was a lot less lenient on Shamrez. Howard was now awarded 18 years in prison and Shamrez was given 19. Shamrez will be out in 2030 at almost 50 years of age. It seems unfair to me that at 50 he will still have so much of his life left to live, while Faiza never lived past 26 because of him. Are those 19 years in prison enough to undo the thought process he had cultivated for 28 years? His deranged views on women and love that have no place in society? I don't know, and I'm not optimistic about it. And this isn't an optimistic case about hope or justice either. It's just a sad one to me, with Faiza's words from her phone call, "Will you find me soon?" ringing in my ears. Unfortunately, sometimes in life, the honest and heartbreaking answer is no. If you like what we do here at Desi Studios and absolutely love what we're wearing today, this is merch you can go buy all for yourself.
You can buy this Desi Crime merch in our YouTube store on the link down below at Kadak Merch. Keep the engines at Desi Studios rolling so we can pay our videographer right behind the camera to make these amazing episodes just for you.